With Riftbound right around the corner, whether you're looking to run the event or participate in the event, in this video we're going to cover everything that you need to know. We have a Riftbound Discord where we talk about all things Riftbound, so make sure you join it. Links in the description down below. If you're a local game store, there is one thing that's very confusing, and that's going to be the promo packs. The promo packs, depending on how you received it, might look differently. You might have the champion card in front, or you might have the legend cards in front. The biggest thing that you need to understand is with the format that we're doing, which is the modified starter deck, you're going to pick either a Victor, Jinx, or Lee Sin Precon. What's supposed to happen if you're a local game store is if a person picks a Lee Sin Precon, they should be getting the promo pack with the stamp Lee Sin. And if they pick Jinx, they get the Jinx stamped promo card, and they're picking Victor, they get the Victor stamp local card. However, what's the issue is some of the packs it got reversed. So what happens is the legend is in front of the champion and it's hiding the cards, so you can't see the card in the back. So realistically, what should be happening if you're learning the event is if the player picks their champion deck, I guess, you need to give them the associated promo with their deck. Pretty straightforward, that's the easy part. What's the strongest deck if you're playing? What are cards you should be keeping? Now, to explain it really quickly, if we're looking at this from a strictly monetary point of view, the Lee Sin deck is the least value. Jinx and Victor are pretty comparable. Their only difference is maybe $1 or two. So these two decks have the most value. Lee Sin by far has the least value. However, when it comes to strength of the deck, Lee Sin is the strongest deck, with Jinx second and Victor third. We've done a ton of playtesting. I will briefly explain why the decks work they are. Let's start off with the Victor precon. The reason why Victor is so weak is for these three main reasons. Number one, inconsistent endgame. Two, small bodies. Three, weak leader. This whole deck revolves around Grand Stratagem. If you only have one copy in your deck, the odds of you drawing into it is very slim. If you have Grand Stratagem, you're definitely favored to win, but if you don't have this in your hand, you're definitely going to have a hard time trying to close out a game. Next is bodies. The biggest body that Victor has is a Cruel Patron for 6. 6 isn't a threatening enough number because 2, 3 threes can get over Cruel Patron. Lee Sin also has some pretty big units, and also Jinx has some really annoying spells to deal with Cruel Patron. Last is Victor Innovator. His champion is very expensive, and on the turn you play it, it doesn't do anything. And not only that, though, its body is weak, and you also go behind on rune because you're forced to pay a power cost. So the reason why this deck just doesn't perform well is even though you have cards like Ravenbloom Student, which is probably the best 2 costs in the game, you are held back by its overall kit. Sure, you have really good cards like Stupefy, All the Weak, and also Hidden Blade, which is really good for controlling the opponent's board, but these things only control the opponent's board and it doesn't really help you win the game. What helps you win the game is having units at a battlefield, and because Victor's units are typically on the weaker side, you usually end up having a hard time contesting battlefields during showdown because either your bodies aren't big enough and your spells are quite committal. Now, Jinx is the second strongest deck. The reason why I would say she's the second strongest deck is because she has a simple game plan, but the problem is the ceiling is very, very high. In order to pilot this deck properly, it actually requires a lot of thinking. The deck is built in a way where you have expensive units, control cards, and aggro cards. So you can play Jinx in a bunch of different ways. A lot of people would tell you to get rid of Magma Worm from your structure deck. I think that's actually a really bad idea. The reason being is you want to have late game cards in your deck, even though Jinx's ability allows you to draw 2 cards if you have low resources in your hand. But people don't understand that you need to have a end game win condition, and Magma Worm is a pretty solid win game end condition. Too many people value the cards such as Fading Memory, Void Seeker, because they are quote unquote good removals for, say, for example, you're trying to deal with a big mountain drake that a Lee Sin puts out. These cards kind of help, but at that point, you've done something wrong. This deck is supposed to play for board, have a bunch of units, and strategically take over battlefields, retreat from battlefields, and conquer continuously to be able to get your assault triggers. And the units that you have are actually pretty decent for their stat line. Even a card like Raging Soul is a card that I would still keep in the pre-com, even though its stat line is a little bit worse and not on average for its cost. It's a good turn 2 play. It also doesn't force you to recycle a rune. You also have a lot of options with Vi, Traveling Merchant, Brazen Buccaneer, a turn 2 by my body. That's pretty good. Vi has one of the best endgame finisher if you can get ride the wind combo. However, most people, if they're not a good pilot, would have a little bit of a tougher time playing Jinx, only because Jinx is definitely higher skill ceiling. You play her more with a endgame package in mind? Do you play her with more spells? Do you play her with more units? There's a lot of ways to be able to build Jinx, and if you're piloting Jinx, it's gonna be a lot harder because there's just a lot more thinking involved. And if you play her and you don't play her properly, more often than not, you're probably gonna lose. And if you want to play a simple strong deck, I would probably just recommend Lee Sin. The reason why Lee Sin is the strongest deck is because it has a good early game, mid game, and end game. Lee Sin has all of the budget staples in his deck for a top tier Master Yi deck. This combination of units right here is already an amazing early game, mid game package. Lee Sin also has some really good spells. Charm is such an amazing low cost removal card, same as Challenge. Lee Sin also has the ability to buff a unit, which gives a unit a might, but if you are ever floating an extra rune, you can always use this ability to extract value, so it's always going to be useful. Lee Sin's champion also does not have a power cost associated to it, so just playing him, you do not have to recycle a rune. He also has very good turn 2 plays with Wizened Elder. This Wizened Elder can become a 6 might unit. It's essentially a 5 energy 6 might unit, which is pretty good. You also have Mountain Drake, which is such a big and annoying endgame card to deal with. Udyr is also very, very useful in a buff deck because of its utility. And even Wild Claw Shaman, even though for its body it's technically slightly below average, it still offers you a solid turn 2 play, especially if you have a buff on a unit. This deck overall just has a very strong, simple, but consistent play line that you can always just get the most value no matter how you play. If you play against a Victor deck and they do Call the Weak, you have all these little guys to eat Call the Weak. If they play Hidden Blade, that's also fine because these are your main units that you have, and if they're hidden blading it and drawing two, you're never unhappy. And if they are going to hidden blade a mountain drake, it means you're probably in a really commanding position because if you're not winning, you usually don't really play mountain drake. Since if you play mountain drake by itself and you're losing, it's too slow. So if you're ever in a position to have an opponent either hidden blade your Udyr or mountain drake, you're probably in a really commanding position. If you're going against Jinx, oh man, same thing. Jinx's units are very weak. You can charm them, get rid of it. You can challenge them to get rid of it. They're very small. And your thresholds are very, very annoying to get over. This Stalwart Poro, if you give it a buff, it's a 3. And if it's defending, it's a 4. That's pretty annoying to deal with. Same thing with your wielder of water. If it's defending, it's at a 4, but if you give it a buff, it's at a 5. Those are some pretty annoying breakpoints for your opponent to get over. And not only that though, you do have accelerate, so you have a way to get fast, and you also have first mate, which makes a unit ready. So this deck just offers so much. The only downside is the card's worth overall. Not the best. Oh, and I totally forgot about one of the more OP cards I didn't even talk about. Discipline. Discipline, give a unit +2, draw 1. It doesn't force you to go down in power, and it also replaces itself with its draw 1 effect. Such a good staple spell. It makes it so that you always go up in card advantage, and you only will ever play it if you need to get over a unit. So overall, this deck plays really consistent. It's really good against Victor. It's really good against Jinx. I would say that against Victor and Jinx, you're more favored against Victor, a little bit less favored against Jinx because of how fast it can be. But overall, the decks are all about roughly the same power. I wouldn't be too worried about which deck you pick. You should, at the end of the day, still pick the deck that you like. But if you wanted my opinion, Lee Sin's the strongest. Jinx has a high ceiling. Victor is the weakest. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to put it in the comment section down below. We have a Riftbound community where we talk about all things Riftbound, link in the description down below. Looking forward to seeing you guys at all the events. We'll be posting more content as the game releases. John Pano signing out. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.